Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 2 of lateral thinking. So you recall that in the first parts, which I asked you to watch if you haven't watched this part because there's no point in cheating, this is in all to enhance your cognitive abilities and not to learn how to be cheaty and slippery and sly, right? So, in the part number 1, we exposed a number of lateral thinking problems and I gave a cursory definition of what lateral thinking problems were. So let's return to the problems in detail. The first one is, there was a man traveling towards a field with a pack on his back. When he got to the field, he died. Why? So, the answer was not that there was an enraged bull, or a huge hole, or that a piece of molten lava exploded from a volcano in the vicinity and fell on his face, or that a boulder fell out of a plane. No. For perhaps the more clever amongst you, the more astute, the ones with the most sagacity amongst you, worked out that in fact he jumped out of a plane, and the pack on his back was his parachute that failed to open, so he died immediately on impact. So what does this illustrate? It illustrates that it's dangerous to make assumptions. When you're told a man is traveling with a pack on his back towards a field, you imagine bucolic delights. You imagine the man traveling along a mountain lane with a rucksack on his back. So it's very important when you're given a problem not to make any false assumptions. Go only with the principal things, the principle of simplicity, as Marcus Aurelius said. What is each thing in itself? Don't add anything, don't imagine anything. Go only with the basic facts. Sherlock Holmes would not disagree. Problems are complicated enough without us adding. Now sometimes lateral thinking problems are specifically crafted to induce error into us and to make us make assumptions, so be very careful. The problem number 2 was a man walking along a path, and he comes to a ramification, and all of a sudden, to his dismay, he sees that the sign that would have indicated the road has been spun many times around the wind and is lying in the mud. So how does he know which way to go? And it's getting dark. Well, there are 2 possible answers. The first is, he knows where he came from. Well, we didn't think of that one, did we? So all he has to do is point the part of the sign towards where he comes from with the correct name, and the other 2 will align automatically. The next one is, conceive of it as a puzzle and look at the angles of each one and fit it in like a puzzle to see which way it fits. So what can we learn from this is that often we already hold the key to the problem in our heads, but we tend to forget about it. We try to over-concentrate on the problem. So ask yourselves, when asked something, whether you already have knowledge that could solve the problem. The third one is the murder case, the hypothetical murder case. But let's say it was a real murder, just to make it more dramatic. Remember, 2 men having visited a house, guardians of a house, one in between 11 and midnight, the second in between midnight and 8 in the morning. An old man was gassed in his room. He lay dead in his bed. His dog lay dead on his mat next to the bed. There was a glass of water, half empty or half full, next to the bed. And on the windowsill were 15 flies that had been killed instantaneously due to the gas. What is the solution? Well, I should ask you what it is. The solution is that if the man was killed in his bed and didn't have time to get up and choke and try to get towards the door, and the dog didn't move because he had a smaller body mass and he was killed instantaneously, it stands to reason that those tiny little flies on the window would have been killed like that. And if they were killed, and if there were 15 on the windowsills, statistically the chance of that happening in the dark is absolutely remote and beyond reasonable doubt. Therefore it had to be light, therefore it had to be the second man, because he admitted to visiting the house somewhere in between midnight and 8 in the morning, by which time the light had come up. So there's your solution to that one. And the fourth one is the most interesting and the most complex. And I hope that you solved it, because as I said, there was a very real solution to this problem. There they are on the pebbly path, the man and his beautiful daughter, pebbles, white and black pebbles, and the old man has picked up 2 black pebbles and has put them inside a bag that he holds closed with a tight fist, and he says to the young lady, you have to choose one of the pebbles. If you take a black pebble, you will become my wife, and if you take a white pebble, you shall walk free, and I will exonerate your father of all his debts. And the young lady can't accuse the old man of cheating, because then he'll fly into a terrible rage, and he has absolute control over the situation, or so he thinks. unless the girl is really clever, unless you are clever on your side of the camera. And she has to find a ruse to be able to liberate herself without accusing the old man of being a cheat. So the solution is that she says, I accept that fate decides this. I accept that if I take a black pebble, I shall become your wife. But you also accept, old man, in whatever decency that you may have, and wisdom that the years has given you, that if I take the white pebble, you will respect your words, and I shall go free. And the old man says, choose a pebble. So she puts her hand in, and he allows just enough room for her slender, maidenly hand to go in. She takes a pebble, it doesn't matter which, because they're both black, as we know. But before opening her palm, she holds her hand downwards, and she goes, oops, I dropped it. And with the speed of gravity and the poor eyesight of both elderly men, neither will have been able to determine. So then, without letting a beat pass, she'll say, oh, but I have the solution. All we have to do is look inside the bag, see what color the pebble is, and the one that I chose must necessarily have been of the opposite color. How brilliant is that? Because the old man, the only way to get out of it would be to expose himself as having cheating. No, it couldn't be. I put 2 black ones in the bag. So what can we learn cognitively about this? What can we learn in terms of ways of thinking? Well, it's a concept that, as a lawyer, I will refer to as referential logic, or relative logic. If somebody says, well, how much are you willing to bid for the company? You're not allowed legally to say, well, I'll give you 80% more than the highest bidder, without knowing, because that would be too easy. So the law forbids that. But in this case, let's think about it. We're reasoning by reference, or in a relative fashion. If that one is black, this one must be white. It's a deduction by a relative process. So I hope you enjoyed this little presentation, and please subscribe, like, and check further videos, many of which go into all kinds of thinking problems and cognitive challenges. Thank you very much.